Hello there, this is Van Fornia, our benevolent Cytocorum, going to play Palinurus. I think it's supposed to be a visual novel. Something like Mist, maybe? I don't know. But, let's see what it's like. Palinurus. Yep, that is. Okay. Some menu options on the bottom: back save, quick load, skip, auto and preferences. The story of the Ocean of Stars. Joy, beautiful. Okay. Maribel Station spiraled ceaselessly in an otherwise unremarkable corner of deep space. I was waiting for my flight number to be called. I tapped a finger against my knee, tap tap, eager to be on my way. I had rehearsed this ritual countless times before. Maribel Station was hardly remarkable as far as space stations went. Though then again, who was to say there were many truly remarkable space stations in the first place? Well, I mean, I'm sure if ever many will be built, a ton of them would be industrial, but there'd probably be quite a few commercials or commercial sections within them that would be like shopping malls and stuff. Anyhow, surely there were probably hundreds of millions of travelers passing in droves through Andromeda Central Station. Andromeda was a work of art. Performers, painters, composers would all gather in the artificially terraformed Central Plaza to find an audience. Artificially terraformed? I mean, probably rotational gravity and some plants, but yeah. It was a mosaic of colors, sights, sounds, and a brazen horde of intergalactic human culture, like a Venice atop a sea of stars. And I was stuck here on this grey factory-produced pit stop, waiting by my lonesome for my flight's preparations to finish up. For as long as I could remember, space travel out in the boonies was like this: lonely, tedious, cramped, time-consuming, stripped down to the status of a commute that never seemed to end. Space travel as an enterprise was far too expensive and far too dangerous for allowing anything short of a megacorporation to handle the logistics. Well, unless you can have minimized FTL drives or something like that, then private ships would be a thing more. I glanced down to my ticket. Sure enough, there it was: Titan Transportation Solutions, in loud, bold, bleak font. They were one of the big players in this whole field, and they were the ones that footed the bill for, I don't know, thousands of space stations just like this one. And let's be perfectly clear here. Space is big, enormous. Try to wrap your head around how infinitely spread out, how empty it all really is. You can't. To get anywhere of consequence in space, one must leapfrog through dozens upon dozens of space stations like these scattered throughout the galaxy. I've been doing precisely that for the better part of an old Earth month. So rest assured I was well rehearsed. I knew my lines. I could nail down the song and dance in my sleep. I was, at any rate, getting restless. There isn't a lot to see in space, just tons of tiny, identical white dots and plenty of tiny gray checkpoints to pass through. But that was the price you had to pay to get anywhere. And sometimes, if you're lucky, you'd get an occasional nebula or debris cloud or a band of pirates. I focused my attention on the silver spaceship which laid before me. I'd seen many like it before. It was small, intended for a single occupant. From the outside it looked relatively unremarkable. It was sleek like an arrow. The cockpit stood out. The windshield wrapped itself around the front of the vessel, stopping just as the ship's nose began to flow downwards into its underbelly. Its exterior was sleek, its curving wings wide like that of an albatross. Attention, attention, Maribel Station. The intercom crackled. We are now boarding one-man shuttle flight 93094B, shuttle flight 93094B. Passenger of flight 93094B, please secure your belongings and board immediately. Finally, that was just the notice I'd been waiting for. My flight was prepped out and ready. I hurried down the hangar bay, checked to make sure the shuttle was marked with my flight number, and slipped myself inside. The cabin interior betrayed its sleek exterior. Electric lights lined the wall at waist height, with white lights along the ceiling, lighting the vessel up with a flow. Okay. The floor was lined with dark navy blue carpet that traveled up the walls for a few inches. I made my way towards the cockpit, taking a look around. The first thing I noticed was there were two seats. This confirmed my hunch that this was a repurposed vessel. I remembered that back in the day every spaceship required human pilots and co-pilots. I guess this was a relic from the old regime. There wasn't much room to move around in the cockpit. A horde of buttons, dials, flashing lights, and other mechanisms were scattered around the controls console. The cockpit was dominated by the enormous windshield that opened up to a commanding view of, at the moment, precisely nothing. Oh, looks like a gas giant or something there. But nothing but space and an ocean of stars. Or they drew an ocean of gray here. It was hard to get excited for such a sight anymore. That would be sad. Within moments, the cockpit became bathed in a warm blue light, and a computerized voice began to speak. New passenger detected, initiating registration sequence. I held up the ticket between two fingers just to make sure the system registered it. The blue light shifted around the team and then dissipated suddenly. What team? Around the ticket? Or whatever. Passenger identification ticket code hashtag 0929403. Transit authorized. Spooling intelligent navigator kernel. Analyzing anima complex, unlocking communication synthesis codec. Quantum processors are online. Database registries are online. Analytical engines are online. Actualization key is online, registering hex sequences and ionic bulkheads. Checking firmware for updates 1.2. Firmware is currently up to date. My word, this is Linux. Okay, checking sentience. Not that there's anything wrong with Linux, it's just super complex. Checking sentience limitation codec 1.2. Unit awakening authorized. Intelligent navigator persona unlocked. Navigator 22109 CBP. Copyright Enceladus Intergalactic Transportation Year 2520. Unit named Intelligent Navigator Budapest. Budapest. Initializing. One moment, please. ... I heard something click above my head and glanced up to notice a small metal compartment extruding a multitude of lenses, like the most indecisive camera in the cosmos. So that's where it was. Inside, some mechanism whirred to life, and the lenses began to twist, oscillate, and extend. And then they focused on a single point, the pilot's seat to the right. It was a holographic projector, and it was creating an image. Okay. Slowly, a human figure formed itself. Its form was translucent, accompanied by a dress as white as ivory. For a second, it seemed that it had caught fire as a brilliant red air flowed from its head down to its back and shoulders. Delicate feminine features emerged as one: ears, nose, eyes, and a mouth curled in polite neutral grin. Two long and slender arms trailed to two small and slender hands clasping each other in front of the flowing dress. And then its eyes opened, revealing irises of striking sapphire. They looked like planets glowing against the backdrop of deep space. It took all the appearance of a woman, but I recognized the emulation at work. This would be the personal navigator assigned to the shuttle, an artificial intelligence designed to serve humanity. Greetings, passenger, sir. Are you doing well today? Yes. I'm doing fine, thank you. I took a second to ease into my seat, checking over all the belts and harnesses which draped at my hard suit. Time to head out again, I suppose. Space travel certainly does get exhausting after a while. But oh well, at least the navigator seems nice this time. AIs had become a fixture in space travel by this point. Before you needed 2 pilots at least to operate a vessel like this. But programs didn't need food or water, and they certainly didn't ask for remuneration. It was a convenient cost-cutting measure for the megacorps, and the switch was welcomed by consumers with open arms. I'm glad you are feeling well. I am the Intelligent Navigator Budapest, and I will be accompanying you on this voyage. Now let's take a look at your registration. Oh no, blue screen of death. Everything's over already. The navigator turned its back to me, bringing up electronic windows, records, and data like it was conjuring magic barriers. People loved AIs for stuff like this. They brought the efficiency of a personal planner, calculator, and computer and stuffed it all into a pretty-looking package with flair and style of doom. By all stretches of the imagination, they were wonderful workers. They worked tirelessly, they were quick thinkers, and you could customize anything about them to meet your own needs. It seems this navigator was left with its default settings, though just as well. I didn't plan to see much of it from the cabin. The pilot seat had been retooled to fit its hologram generator, so I'm not much use here anyway. Departing from Marable Station at 0400 Imperial Standard Time. Throughout a galaxy? Destination, Galactic Grand Central Station in the Alpha Centauri system. The Alpha Centauri is sort of in its own little corner, but if you have FTL, I guess it doesn't matter. This is going to be quite a lengthy journey, isn't it? Not to worry, passenger sir. You have my word. I'll get you to Grand Central safe and sound. I have my doubts. Some people ended up getting too attached to their AIs. Personally, I tended to keep mine at a distance. At the end of the day, they were basically programs, lines of code assembled into the visage of a person. Whatever niceties it uttered came from the mouth of a programmer or some psychologist in a clinic, or at least from a dialogue construction engine designed by one. I was content to confirm my presence and leave the piloting to the navigator. I nodded in affirmation. We'll be launching from the station now. Please remain seated and harnessed for this proceeding. Roger that, loud and clear. I took a few paces to my seat in the cabin, not too far from the personal navigator stationed in the cockpit. I lowered myself into the chair. It was surprisingly plushy. As usual, I threaded my arms through the safety harness and then clicked the connectors together. Leaning back, I turned my head to look out the window to my right. I heard the electronic sputtering and whirring of the shuttle disengaging from the hangar restraints. I felt movement stirring up in my stomach, and suddenly the shuttle lurched forwards. After a few moments of throttle, we reached open space and cruised our way out of the station. And it appears we are off. Currently at cruising speed of 40,000 kph, piloting navigational route now. Calculating estimated arrival time. ... So, passenger sir, do you travel often? Yes, very. But never with a navigator as amiable as yours truly, I assume? I laugh. That's pretty clever for a navigator to come up with that, or your programmers? That line's one of my own, thank you very much. One of your own? Which you thought up using the processors your company built for you? Huh. Teasing your navigator is against the regulations, you know. I ought to have you reported. Oh dear. I do apologize, though. I thought you said you weren't a novice to travel. I'm not. Seems like a greenhorn to me. Which of the other navigators have you even met? Huh. Collecting survey data for the company, I see. Don't underestimate me, navigator. I wasn't joking about how much I've traveled. Let's see, there was Vienna, Warsaw, Chicago, Osaka, Chiang Mai. I get it. You've had your way with a bountiful cast of artificial intelligences. You make it sound so indecent when you put it like that. Oh, is that so, passenger, sir? I gave a small polite chuckle out of respect, though it's not like I was particularly obligated to show such social courtesy. There should be something here. This is blank. It could just be my computer, but the blankness is annoying. Okay. It was just a peculiar personal habit of mine which I'd obtained from spending so much time in transit. If you don't mind me asking... Huh? What'll you be doing once we arrive in Alpha Centauri? It better be something worthwhile after such a long trip. Is this how you screen for potential troublemakers? I wasn't planning anything shady now. The navigator giggles a short pre-programmed giggle. Haha, goodness no, just curious is all. I ask the same questions to all of my passengers. Just curious. The navigator is just curious. Something of a tradition I have. A tradition it has. No kidding. I shrugged. Sightseeing mostly. Maybe I'd try my luck on Alpha Centauri B2. The planet, it must be unbearably hot at this point in its orbit. Oh, it's unbearably hot all the time. I just like walking into the core of a smelting plant. Haha. True. Any business down there? Corporate espionage, is it now? Now, sir, I assure you none of these questions were pre-programmed. I'm going to be piloting shuttles for time eternal if you haven't noticed. You could afford me a little curiosity about my passengers. It's mostly morbid curiosity. Maybe that's pulling me there. Maybe I'll scope out some mining prospects in the area. They say they found platinum down there. I could use it, afford a square meal. More likely I'll end up digging some nickel and iron, but that'll be fine with me. Shoot for the moon and you land among the stars or something like that. All that for a meal? Pardon me for saying so, passenger sir, but that sounds a little reckless. You suppose so? I'm not bothered by it. It's hard to scrape up credits in this economy. Besides, it's bound to be a pretty view, and who knows, maybe some other lunatics had the same idea I did, and it's all mined out. Sounds like fun. If only I could. Haha, you're quite the character, sir. I'll be rooting for you to hit it big. Thank you kindly for the well wishes. Coming from an AI, I didn't think much of it, but it was nice to hear aloud all the same. You're kindly welcome. Now we'll be serving a complimentary drink and beverage momentarily. That's great. I had to skip breakfast. The navigator smiled. After the meal, I went ahead and took a short nap. Snuggled into the cabin chair, I slept lightly but well. I didn't dream of anything, but I didn't want to either. After some time of sleep, however, I was awakened with a start. Sir! Passenger, sir! Please come to the cockpit. I bolted up, startled. Something seemed to have gone wrong. Something seems to have gone wrong. Wow. I took that as my cue to rush over. Oh, here's this image, yay! As I stepped into the cockpit, warning lights and alerts began to blare, bathing the cockpit in frantic lights. The navigator set to work. I guess we finally have stars, and instead of blue, the thing there's red. Okay. And it's a red screen of doom. ... Oh. How interesting. What is that? Did something happen? Not to cause you any alarm, passenger, sir, but there's been an occurrence of doom. The shuttle's short-range radar has detected an incoming debris storm. We're about to be perforated. That doesn't sound good. Actually, in fact, that's a very bad thing, isn't it? Well, I wouldn't say very bad, but you might want to... Now, like I said, there's no cause for alarm or anything, of course not. But you might want to brace for impact. A debris storm. Yeah, maybe get back to the chair that you had him rush out of. I hurried back to my seat in the cabin to look out a window, squinting my eyes to see through the blackness of space. I could make out a few sparkling lights. Reflections? Yeah, reflections of doom. The ship itself had bright, powerful lights attached to its wings, tail number under the cockpit, and every time they flashed I got a peek at some sort of approaching mass. Space potatoes. Hundreds, maybe thousands of meteoroids, drifting aimlessly through space, clustered together in a school of doom. They encroached closer, unrelenting, a soaring landslide of steel on a direct collision course with the shuttle. Carboniferous would be more in the asteroid belt. I suppose this would be somewhere between star systems, I guess. Something. ... Passenger said. I felt my heart sink. Okay. The music needs to chill. I felt my heart sink deep down in my stomach. Actually, no, it went past that. Plummeted straight down to my bowels. Whoa, crappy. No cause for alarm, alright. I've got it under my control. Do you have shields? Do you have enough laser power to vaporize everything in front of you? If not, it's about to be extra crunchy. No cause for alarm. My foot. No cause for alarm. I repeated those words to myself, more incredulously each time. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I feared was to come. Still as a statue, I closed my eyes, content to not watch it go down. Oh, that's not good. What you love to hear your pilot say. Tap, 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 tap. I could hear the sound of particles hitting against the hull, the pressure of metal ringing. They started sparse, spread out. Tap, 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 tap. Only a few minutes ago, the cabin had been eerily silent, and now a constant stream of sound filled it, like we'd flown into the midst of a typhoon. Of doom. I could imagine the cold wind hitting my face, the fury of the old earth. I think it was a better coping mechanism. I'd rather be lost in a storm on a terrestrial surface than weathering a debris storm in a dingy old shuttle in one of the most remote parts of charred space. Alpha Centauri, when you have the entire galaxy filled, Alpha Centauri is a remote part. I mean, it within local interstellar space, it is off in its own corner. Like, it's the closest to our star system, but, like, our star system is the closest it's to, and it's just, like, mostly empty space around it apart from where we're at. But, no, if you already have FTL and you have most of the galaxy filled, it's going to be spread out from Earth generally, and that would not be a remote part. It would just be, like, an already filled part. Unless, I don't know, you somehow forgot about it in some database, or every database, I don't know. I went, popping an eye open. A heavier rock pounded against the hull, and the ship lurched to one side. It didn't seem like we'd sustained any serious damage yet, so I sat there, clenching my legs, wringing my hands in desperation, hoping the storm would soon pass. Well, maneuvering away from the storm would be a better thing. Wham, wham. Like fists driven by fury and rage, the meteoroids continued to pound against the shuttle. With each impact, the rocks dug into the hull, denting it and pushing against the cabin walls. The flooring pressed against my legs as a large divot was suddenly formed that was too close for comfort. Another larger meteoroid ricocheted off the window I was sitting next to. I flinched and writhed in my seat. Look, I've been through worse than this before, alright? Way, way worse than this. I am a veteran of the trade, an unsung hero in artificial intelligence world, you know? This is nothing that I can't handle, so... Oh. That's bad. They came into sight. I saw enormous meteoroids, the heavy hitters of the storm, hurling themselves directly in our path. Move! Oh my word. Even the awe-inspiring light of distant stars cowered in the shadow of the meteoroids. One was on a due course for the cabin. It was a wretched gray jagged mass that glistened devilishly, its iron deposits reflecting in the flashing emergency lights of our ship. Evasive maneuvers, anyone? It was going to impact, and it was going to impact very soon. Can you not move? I swallowed hard and lowered my hands to undo my harnesses. My hands shook thunderously. I couldn't get at the switches and belts. I tugged away at the straps, but they only seemed to tighten. Come on, darn it. Before all the strength had been drained from my arms, the harnesses and belts miraculously disengaged. Passenger, sir, you need to get into the cockpit. It's the most isolated part of the ship, and we can seal it if worse comes to worse. Oh dear. You need to get here now. I exhaled deeply and darted towards the cockpit. Crash. Shrapnel and sparks flew everywhere, lighting up the world in a blaze of yellow and orange. The entire cabin swayed and shook, and the horrendous sound of metal sheets rending apart filled my ears. I slammed into the cockpit door, opened it, and let myself fall through, and then kicked it shut. I guess it's a view screen rather than a window. Scrambling over to the console, I sealed the cockpit door and engaged all the airlocks. My breathing was frantic. My breathing blurred. I think sight blurred would make more sense there. I was in a panic when I saw the pale figure of the navigator scrolling through monitors and screens and spreadsheets. It comforted me at least a little bit. That one was especially bad. Damage report. The hull's been breached. You're lucky you got here in time, sir. I took some time to settle in, trying to find my footing in the cockpit as the shuttle rumbled in the midst of the storm. I paused. I felt an odd sensation where my hand was resting on the windshield. I drifted my eyes down to take a look. A hairline fracture along the window pane. Oh, it's a window, and it's isolated? What? My finger ran along the thin narrow line it formed in the ultra-hardened glass. The splintered patterns it formed were remarkable, but I was paralyzed with terror. Suddenly, another lurch forward, another large collision. Please, sir, take the co-pilot seat and strap in. It's dangerous to remain standing at this time. Receptive to the machine's goading, I staggered to my feet, watching my footing in the lopsided cockpit. Eventually, I sunk into the plushy co-pilot seat to the navigator's right. I glanced over to her. Hey, navigator, quick question. How in the heck did you not notice that mess of meteoroids heading our way? They didn't show up on the short-range radar. Their iron compounds deposit absorbed the signals, is what I'm thinking. The storm came in too fast to be traced. I paused, so there was nothing we could have done about it. The storm had just been drifting through space and had just decided to ravage us in its wake. What? Are you alright, passenger sir? Are you hurt? That was a nasty beating you took. The program looked so concerned for me, still rubbing my forehead. I waved its concerns off, groaning to myself. My word, did the music return to full volume? Yeah, I ought to be fine. Nothing I can't handle. What are we going to do now? Well, our vessel sustained critical damage and we've been knocked considerably off course. Both the navigational and communication systems are completely offline and I haven't been able to find a way to repair them. But for now, we need to do something about the damage. Right now, the rest of the ship is nothing but sheared hulking mass adding unnecessary weight. Preparations for jettisoning the cockpit are underway. We should be far removed from the storm in due time. Understood. Proceed as you should, navigator. Wait, what? Jettisoning the cockpit. This transit shuttle is of an older model, sir, previously designed for 2 human pilots. In the case of emergency, the shipmaker installed a simple mechanism to eject the cockpit, which contained the laboratory and necessary supplies for emergency survival. It was essentially a primitive form of an escape pod, except roomier and not as guaranteed to work. Although I believe the jettison system of this craft is still in working order. My word, okay. Why is it just... they want to drown out how boring it is with loud music. Okay, although I believe the jettison system of this craft is still in working order, I do take care of it after all. How? What? Well, when I thought about it, it wasn't such a strange thing to phase out now that pilots were almost always navigators. Even then, I was glad it wasn't phased out entirely. The age of the ship may very well have been what saved us in that moment. Okay, well, that sounds doable. When are we going to be performing that jettison exactly? Hey, don't climb up on me now. It's not a sure thing, but I'll have to navigate our subsystems to see if it's still in working order. I thought you said it was still in working order. It is. Probably. The machine lied to me? Probably doesn't really. I'm going to need to inspect the circuitry in order to fire up the launch mechanism. This system was hardwired before the time of Navigator, so it hasn't been restructured in software like most everything has been. The AI turned to me apprehensive, looking at Soft Eyes. It's pretty scary down there, so watch out for me, passenger sir. It doesn't sound particularly confident right now. The program bowed stiffly with a weak smile. That sinking feeling in my gut stirred up again. Hey, don't talk to me like that. You're a personal navigator, aren't you? The AI's eyes drifted up to mine. Okay. For whatever reason, I couldn't bring myself to match her gaze. I looked off to the side. I mean, do your best down there. I'm counting on you. The program stared back at me for a few painful moments, as if figuring something out in its mind. Its eyes were piercing, serious. In time, its eyebrows furrowed, a fiery look bursting into its irises. Understood. I'm going in. Make sure your harnesses are correctly secured, and I'll be back soon. I nodded. Click. That was the fastest I've ever fastened my seat straps. Oh, great! A white blank screen rather than a holographic display switched off in a flash of white light, and its cameras retracted down into the inner workings of the console. In that moment, I was left to my own devices in the face of death. The cockpit was a closed room, a frame of steel and duraglass, the only thing separating the pilots from the harsh, hellish vacuum of space. I looked out at the infinite expanse before me, the distant flickering stars. Boom! I felt the ship rumble past the impact of another massive meteoroid. I shivered. Was I going to die here, alone in the infinite vastness of space? No one would care. No one would ever find me. Maybe I'd end up drifting out here forever. That scared me more than anything else. I felt my seat vibrate. My hands fell instinctively to clasp the armrests, attempting to keep myself steady. Arg! The entire room was shaking. I felt like the harnesses were about to rip apart. Ka-chunk! And then, like a ragdoll, I was flung back to my seat, sinking further and further into the stiff leather. I couldn't move my head. The pressure was too forceful. I simply stared out the front of the cockpit as I saw it shoot forwards. We'd definitely just been jettisoned. The cockpit is... Small pebbles pelted the windshield, but I didn't care. I was ecstatic, laughing to myself in giddy joy. There was... The way was clearing up. The program had managed it. We were going to make it. We were about to hit another enormous meteoroid. Slam. Our cockpit hurled through space, spinning erratically from the scrape of the meteoroid. I clutched to my seat for dear life, feeling the G-forces press me into my seat. Our cockpit, once draped in flashing lights and infographic displays, was instead shrouded in a suffocating curtain of darkness, pierced only by the distant stars, flittering in the distance like fireflies beyond my reach. I winced as the seat straps dug into my chest, the only thing keeping me from a hard collision with the windshield. I felt nauseous. The full impact of the centrifugal forces laid itself bare. I strained to look at my side where the navigator had previously been, furiously pecking away at the interface's troubleshoot or wreck of a transit shuttle. The logical part of me understood what it was up to operating inside circuitry and wiring, but I still felt a wave of dread overcome me. What if it didn't work? What if the navigator failed? What if it didn't manage to restore the power, or there was another breach in the hull? I'd have become trapped in the deepest, emptiest expanse mankind had ever known. I was trapped, good as dead, and this was my grave, a coffin of glass and sparkling circuitry. It would preserve my final moments, the dying expression on my face as I suffocated and froze in the vacuum of space. In space, no one can hear you scream. It was a quote from an old ancient story they'd tell to the kids. Perhaps it would have been okay for me to scream here, but not a single utterance escaped from my lips. My throat tightened as I came to terms with the looming shadow of death hovering over me. I closed my eyes, ready to accept my fate. Vroom! My eyes shot open as the cockpit rumbled back to life. The cloak of darkness was cut to ribbons by the various displays stuttering back to life. A flashing red light planted to the control board indicated that something was amiss. I missed that memo. The operating system booted up before my eyes, green code buzzing across the hovering black screen faster than my human eyes could hope to process. NPVH hash equals 4895. Hi tramps at whatever. Pre-enabled. Enabling database access. Metis kernel. My word, someone loves Linux. Or AppleSoft, whatever. Standard time slicing quantum is what? 10,000 US. VMP. What the heck? Okay, did this mean the ship was coming back online? I didn't know what was going on. It's the mermaid thing. I'm here. My deepest apologies for taking so long. A soft chime, too soft given the pressing circumstances, signaled the return of the intelligent navigator. I twisted my head in its direction as it scrambled for the controls. It seemed to hesitate for a moment, nervous, almost wincing. She looked tired. So, pardon my common man's language, but what the heck's going on? The stabilizing subsystems have to be recalibrated. The emergency thrusters remain seated. Remain seated will be undergoing a little turbulence until, all of a sudden, the cockpit lurched forward near immediately. I nearly spat that, feeling the rocking of the cockpit in the pit of my stomach. The eyes of the navigator reflected the glow and flicker of the countless holographic screens. It swiped frantically through flowing diagrams of schematics and forms. Maybe if they had less processing power going to holographic display and more to, say, LiDAR to detect things with light. Like, if you can see the asteroids, you could still use lasers to reflect light off them, determine their range and velocity, that sort of thing. And maybe, I don't know, supply power to gyroscopes for angling the ship and using the torch drive to maneuver away. Something like that. Now it's only one escape pod. The eyes of the navigator reflected the glow. That would have to be a process thing. And the flickering of countless holographic screens. It swiped frantically through flowing diagrams of schematics and forms. There's the red screen of death now. Just a moment. It seemed to yell its response. I opened my jaw to say something in response, but in this state it was pointless to yell at it. The cockpit still felt like it was swirling, and the schematics and sheets upon the sheet and the sheets upon sheets of code only made my scrambled mind ache even more. Ugh, I'm not feeling so hot. You'll be fine. Please remain seated. Hey, there's no need to shout. I'm not shouting. That piercing cry made me jump a good 2 feet, or at least it would have had I not been strapped in. I'm not shouting. There was something different about the program. It turns out it was a human brain. Why was it yelling at me now? Even when we were in the midst of a debris storm, it was calm, orderly, procedural. Sure, it was firm and tense, but only in a professional manner. Looking at it now, scrambling to make key adjustment, frantic movements, it was most certainly panicking. Normal for a human looking into the face of inevitable death, but an artificial intelligence was different. AIs had to remain calm in all circumstances. They even had sentience limitation codecs chips inside them that suppressed sentient and emotional behavior. Oh, guess what? There's the plot device that's not there. Maybe this was just some sort of scenario the personal navigators had never been programmed for. Yay, Turing test thing. Ping. Another chime rang out. The obnoxious red light turned green. Did she pull it off? I felt the G-forces previously pinning my body to my seat ebb away until finally I found I could move comfortably. The stars beyond popped their fluttering, spinning. It seemed our course was finally. Stability subsystem has returned online to partial effectiveness. The AI next to me beamed proudly. The worst seemed to have passed. I groaned wearily, raising my right hand to massage my shoulder. I was aching all over. As I cracked my neck, I found myself face to face with the program at the helm. There was something different in her eyes now. I couldn't quite tell what it was. It was abstract, almost spiritual. Emotional. The girl was staring at me. Oh. So we're good now? I wasn't quite sure what it was asking. It was still a machine, wasn't it? A construct. I felt all kinds of weird being stared at so closely like that. The AI continued on for a moment and then nodded. Yes, the stabilizing subsystem is functioning at this point, as well as the artificial gravity, but I'm still unable to replot our course. I'm not quite sure how far we spiraled away. I think we might even be in uncharted space. But regardless, as soon as the stabilizing subsystem returns to full strength, what does that even mean? We should be able to regain situational awareness and head off on our own way. Does it have some kind of FTL, or are you just going to wait for rescue? The AI explained all this concisely as it continued to study me closely, my brow raised in response. There is something wrong, something on my face. I was just concerned if you... How did you, feel after all that? It seemed like you were put through considerable stress. I paused to gaze back at her expression. The concern in her voice was almost palpable. After all that, I wasn't expecting to be a subject of the doting worry of some sort of machine. But I guess that would be in the programming of what was essentially a space stewardess, now that I thought about it. I smirked. In any case, that was one heck of an understatement on her part. Me, I feel like I just spent 10 minutes on a roller coaster. Huh? The program tilted her head. Apparently it was unable to calculate similes. Never mind, I'm fine. Just a little sore is all. She stared at me for a few seconds longer, studying me more. In time it smiled, seemingly satisfied. What was it thinking? Stretching. What? Stretching is a good way to relieve aches and pains. We aren't anticipating any more turbulence. So, if you like, undo your belts and... Oh no. No, I'm good. I think I'll just rest a bit. Walk around a bit. Or that's perfectly fine. Excuse me, I have to make some calibrations. I wasn't quite sure where that came from. This AI seemed so cheery now, eager to please. There was as well something new in her eyes, a glint of something. She seemed like a different person. Or different from the machine I spoke with when I boarded. I thought I might have seen a spark, something like that in her eyes. It's Johnny 5 ordeal. Or more like, what is it? Wait, sure, it was still a machine. For goodness sake, why they designed them like this, I'd never know. Replacing humans, that's why. And is that supposed to be a bat? Or what the heck is that? I shook my head forcefully as if to force out the intrusive thoughts. An awkward silence fell over the cockpit as the AI continued to fiddle with the display interfaces. I got a look at the expression on her face. Huh. Did they program it so the corner of her mouth would twitch? See, she was fidgeting with herself. It was a little painful to watch. Hey, I spoke up, but stopped mid-sentence. I hadn't committed to memory at all. She turned to me with those curious blue eyes. Yes, sir? Budapest. That was it, I thought. The unchanged expression on her face meant I'd hit the mark. At least I could think well on a dime. I just wanted to say thanks for, saving me and all that. Oh, I only did what any other personal navigator would have done. It was my pleasure too. No, really, that was really incredible. You knew exactly what you had to do, and I wasn't much of a help. Budapest stared back at me silently for a moment that seemed to stretch to eternity. I scratched the back of my neck, thinking of what to follow up with. I'd be dead if you hadn't handled things the way you did, so really. Thank you. Would be better if she steered the ship out of the path of the asteroids. It was my pleasure. I'm just happy that you're safe. There was that look in her eyes again. She stared at me often, surely studying me, watching how I moved, how I spoke. Except she's a hologram and her eyes would actually be the cameras in the ship. But it was more than that. She didn't look away when she talked to me, upfront honest. When she said something, I knew she meant it. I took a look around the cockpit. Now that the situation had calmed down a bit, I recognized now it would be a good time to get our bearings together. At the very least, we were unharmed. Budapest seemed in top shape and I was a little shaken but not stirred. Nonetheless, we've been knocked off course and separated from the rest of the ship. Nothing but a control center left over, a head without a body. So, what do we do now? I'm looking into the matter right now. She frowned visibly while she worked. That wasn't good. According to the diagnostics I've in front of me, while the cockpit should have been equipped with an operating thruster subsystem, it seems the stray meteoroid smashing into our hull caused critical damage to that particular component. So what you're saying is we're stuck in a lifeboat without a paddle right now? She turned to me quizzically for a few moments before nodding slowly. That is correct, I think. If I am understanding the figure of speech in the that is correct. Thankfully, a sufficient amount of life support subsystems are in close to optimal working condition. Artificial gravity generation, oxygen pump, sustenance replicator. So there was a replicator installed in the cockpit. Good. I started to worry about how I'd be feeding myself in here. Artificially manufactured cold chemical paste called food wasn't exactly something out of a dream, but at least I wasn't going to starve. And our solar panels are in working order as well. I'm confident we won't be running out of power for any length of our dream. Do they have a nearby star? Or are they good at collecting enough light from the stars? I mean, to have a solar panel collect light from starlight that's enough to power anything, you'd probably have to have like one giant lens or mirror system, like, that would probably be quite huge. But, oh well. I'm confident we won't be running out of power for any length on our journey. Something like a, you know, a 0 point module, or I don't know, how large would you have to make like a coil to collect power from static? Something like that could be interesting, maybe. Well, hey, that's all sounds great aside from the thrusters, that is. Right? Budapest went silent, her eyes deadlocked on the schematics and diagrams hovering around her. There was one other thing. She looked apprehensive. I wasn't sure what else could have been wrong. The transmitter? Everything seemed to be alright inside the cockpit. I glanced around just to be safe. I could barely tell we were drifting through space. The stars, sleeping silently in the void, were the only indicators we were moving at all. I think I lost a part of me. A part of her? What did she mean by that? That is to say, well, this vessel. I'm connected to it. It's like my body, you could say. Yeah, I think I can understand that much. Losing the thrusters is bad, but at least we... No, not the thrusters, I mean, she clenched her hands into balls, an expression of dread coming across her face. My sentience limitation codec, the main chip in specific, it was destroyed during our escape from the debris storm, and I'm trying to process what to think about it. I'd heard about the limitation chips before. There were few documented cases I remembered. The salaryman in the new Scorpii system found that his AI secretary had been acting oddly. In the late hours of the night, they would get lost in conversations with each other. Their workout fluctuated, and it was weeks until the corporate had heard word of it. They got their research wing and sifted through the AI's code. In the lines of numbers and strings of functions, they were unable to find the root cause of the sudden change, but they produced a chip to suppress this sort of behavior, this internal cognition. They were called sentience limitation codecs and were meant to keep the AIs obedient and subservient. Usually they always did their job, but if hers was shattered, then... So, how are you feeling? Huh? Shocked, she looked over at me, astonished I would ask something like that. I asked, how are you feeling? You seem pretty okay to me right now. Her eyes drifted to the schematics. In her eyes, she saw something that was wrong with her. A silence hung in the air, and I was about ready to drop the issue. I feel hazy, nervous, anxious. There's a sensation inside me. I don't know what it is. A sensation. I'm unable to analyze it. It's familiar, like it's been there a long time, but it's about to explode and change me, and... No, it's already begun. I can't go back now. Budapest hugged herself tightly. I remember what I was told when I was first installed into this ship. I was brought here with a purpose, and that was to perform my duties to my utmost ability. I responded accordingly. It's my pleasure to serve because it's in my programming. I thought nothing of it. I didn't feel anything about it. She raised her head to gaze out the cockpit into the infinite expanse. It was a simpler time. I had only my orders, my programming. Every day I was simply a flowchart of things to do. I did as I was programmed to do and thought nothing of those I helped. They were all pleased with my abilities, my professionalism, my helpfulness, but I was never programmed to process praise. So I'd waved farewell. Please fly with us again soon. She cooed in a practiced voice. It was upbeat, chipper, and married poorly with the increasingly somber face of the program in front of me. Now that I think back on it, I feel like all those people I helped, they were happy to fly with me. I feel like I want to do it more. Because it gives me a warm sensation to think back on those memories and to think I could do what I did again. The slightest grin flashed on her face, but it dissipated just as quickly. But now I can't do that anymore. I'm sure we'll encounter a rescue ship soon after what you did to save my life. I'm sure they'll be happy to take you back in. She shook her head. No, I'm broken. That chip, it was what made my daily routine so simple back then. She raised a hand to her forehead, wincing in slight pain. My eyes widened. Could an artificial intelligence even feel pain? I extended a hand as if to comfort her, before realizing the gesture would be utterly meaningless. I withdrew it immediately, and her eyes turned back to me. These sensations, I can't stop thinking about them. They told me thoughts like these were a liability. If you think twice on the job, it could cost them thousands. One wrong move and an accident could cost lives. They wouldn't risk it just so I could make people happy. I stared back at her, amazed. Her head tilted forward as she sulked. Not like there's much more I could do right now. The cockpit is completely inert. I can't do my job, and thanks to these thoughts swirling through my head. She clutched her head even tighter, wincing. Her hands were trembling. I can't do what I was made to do. I'm second guessing everything now. It's all just a cycle, and I don't know what to... Hey. I caught her attention. She turned her head to me, silently. She was babbling, panicking, and I needed to calm her down. Strangely, for a moment it worked. Her eyes open wide. She was silent, unmoving, but attentive. Look, I understand that you're going through a lot right now, but you're still the same being you were before your limitation chip was destroyed. You still have that same drive, that same capacity to help people. You have your brains, your experience, and well, frankly, I'm going to need you to keep us both alive. What? Still got your orders, don't you? Budapest took a step back. The realization was dawning on her. I could tell there was a glimmer of understanding in her eyes. My primary directive is to keep the passenger alive at any and all costs. I nodded. I'm not sure what will happen once we get back or what they're going to do to you, but you still have a mission, a purpose. I can't imagine what's going through your head right now. It's not like I would know how you're feeling, but if you need someone to help you through this, it's not like I'll be going anywhere either. Her hand seemed to relax just slightly. I was getting through to her, but I couldn't stop there. You got us out of a tight spot, and I know you could do it again. You have years of experience doing this. You know the system better than the back of your hand. Although I guess this is kind of like the back of... What? I guess this is kind of like the back of your hand. Budapest giggled. The program giggled. Her hands lowered. Her fingers snaked through her long red hair. The first time I'd seen her genuinely smile, it was a nice sight to see. I believe in you and what you're capable of, and as long as we're stuck in this drifting hunk of metal, you've still got a job to do, just like I have business to do once I get home. Understand? She nodded. I understand. This may well be my very last voyage as a pilot for Titan Transportation Solutions, but even then I'll do everything in my power to ensure you reach Alpha Centauri. She bowed gracefully. The motion was practiced, but the beaming smile on her face betrayed her new enthusiasm. You have my word. I couldn't help but smile, and also I couldn't help but tease her. Tell you what, if they won't take you back and try to scuttle the ship, I'll take you off their hands. Thinking I'll download and install you on my phone. A phone? But that would be so cramped. And this cockpit isn't? Budapest laughed, enthusiastically relishing the absurd notion. That's a novel way for a program to act. Suddenly embarrassed, she tried her hardest to shut herself up, but couldn't suppress the giggling. Oh my word, this is just annoying after this point, but yeah. Let's call that done for now.